Whispers of the Wild. The Trials of Eron. Part 1. Shadows of Doubt. In the misty valleys of Eldoria, where ancient forests whispered secrets to the wind and rivers carved paths through unyielding stone, there lived a boy named Eron. He was 15 summers old, but his frame told a different tale, one of frailty and quiet surrender. Born under a waning moon, Eron had always been the weakling of his village, a cluster of thatched huts nestled at the edge of the great woods. His limbs were slender like willow branches, bending easily under the weight of even the lightest chores, while other boys his age wrestled by the fire pits or hauled logs for the winter stores. Eron spent his days tending to the herb gardens or mending nets with his nimble fingers. His mother Lyra, a woman of weathered grace with hair like spun silver, often shielded him from the villagers' pitying glances. "Strength comes in many forms, my son," she would say, her voice a soothing balm against the sting of their whispers. But Eron's heart burned with a fire that his body could not match. He longed to prove himself, not to the elders or the burly hunters who returned with tales of conquest, but to the two souls who mattered most, his mother and his younger sister, Mira. Mira was a sprite of 8 years, with eyes like polished emeralds and a laugh that could chase away the darkest clouds. She idolized Eron, following him like a shadow, begging for stories of heroes and beasts. Yet, in her innocent questions, "Why don't you hunt with father's old bow, Eron? Are you afraid?" He heard the echo of his own doubts. Their father had perished years ago in a storm, leaving Eron as the man of the house. But how could he be a man when he could scarcely lift a spear? One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the jagged peaks, Eron sat by the hearth with his family. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls adorned with dried herbs and woven tapestries. Mira perched on his knee, her small hands clutching a wooden doll. "Tell me about the great hunters, brother," she pleaded, "the ones who slay the shadow beasts and bring back trophies." Eron smiled faintly, but his chest tightened. Lyra watched him from across the room, her needle pausing in the fabric she mended. "Mira, your brother has his own strengths. He knows the woods better than any, every root, every berry." "But mother," Mira protested, "Eron could be a hunter too. Couldn't you, Eron? To show you're a man, like father was." The words pierced him like an arrow. That night, as the village slumbered under a blanket of stars, Eron made his decision. He would venture into the great woods alone, hunt a worthy prey, and return with proof of his manhood. No more hiding behind his mother's skirts or his sister's adoring gaze. He would show them, and himself, that weakness was but a veil he could tear away. Before dawn, Eron slipped from their hut, his father's old bow slung over his shoulder, a quiver of arrows at his side, and a small pack of provisions. The bow felt heavy, its string taut like the nerves in his gut. He left a note scratched on birch bark: "I go to hunt. I will return a man. Love, Eron." The village was silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl as he melted into the forest's embrace. The great woods were a labyrinth of towering oaks and tangled underbrush, alive with the rustle of unseen creatures. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in golden shafts, illuminating paths worn by deer and fox. Eron moved cautiously, his breath shallow, every step a battle against the ache in his legs. He remembered his father's lessons, whispered in better days. "Listen to the woods, son. They speak if you're quiet enough." Hours passed. Eron tracked faint prints in the mud. Deer, perhaps a young buck. His arms trembled as he drew the bow for practice, the string biting into his fingers. "I can do this," he muttered, releasing an arrow that thudded harmlessly into a tree. Doubt crept in like fog, but he pressed on, deeper into the wild. By midday, hunger gnawed at him. He paused by a stream, sipping cool water and nibbling on dried berries from his pack. Memories flooded him. Mira's giggles as she splashed in this very stream last summer. Lyra's proud smile when he identified a rare healing herb. "For them," he whispered, steeling himself. As the sun climbed higher, Eron spotted his quarry, a lone stag grazing in a sun-dappled glade. its antlers branched like a crown, muscles rippling under tawny fur. Heart pounding, Eron crouched behind a fallen log, knocking an arrow. His hands shook, sweat beaded on his brow. The stag lifted its head, ears twitching. Now or never. He released. The arrow whistled through the air, embedding in the stag's flank. The beast bolted, crashing through the brush. Eron gave chase, his frail body protesting with every stride. Thorns tore at his clothes, branches whipped his face, but adrenaline surged through him like fire. He followed the blood trail for what felt like miles, his vision blurring from exhaustion. Finally, in a secluded clearing ringed by ancient stones, the stag collapsed. Eron approached, bow ready, but pity welled in him. The animal's eyes met his, wild, resigned. With a swift stroke of his knife, he ended its suffering, whispering thanks to the spirits of the woods as his father had taught. Triumph washed over him, mingled with fatigue. He skinned the stag with trembling hands, taking the antlers as his trophy and enough meat to share with the village. As night fell, he built a small fire, roasting a portion and wrapping the rest. Sleep came fitfully, dreams haunted by visions of home, Mira's laughter, Lyra's embrace. Part 2. Echoes of the Hunt. The second day dawned gray and foreboding, clouds heavy with the promise of rain. Eron shouldered his pack, heavier now with his spoils, and began the trek back. His body ached from the exertion, muscles he didn't know he had screaming in protest, but pride swelled in his chest. He imagined Mira's wide eyes at the sight of the antlers, Lyra's tearful nod of approval. "See? I am a man," he would say. The forest seemed different on the return, quieter, as if holding its breath. Birds ceased their songs, even the wind hushed. Unease prickled at Eron's skin. He quickened his pace, ignoring the burn in his legs. As he neared the village outskirts, smoke curled into the sky. Not the gentle plume of hearth fires, but thick, acrid billows that choked the air. The scent of burning thatch and something metallic, blood, assaulted him. Heart racing, Eron broke into a run, dropping his pack as he burst from the trees. What greeted him was devastation. The village lay in ruins, huts reduced to smoldering skeletons, fences splintered like matchsticks, bodies strewn across the ground. Villagers he knew, faces frozen in terror, arrows with black fletching protruded from chests, sword marks scarred the earth. "No," Eron whispered, staggering forward. "No, no, no!" He searched frantically, calling out for Lyra and Mira. The Elder's Hall was a pyre, flames licking at the remnants. In the center of the square, he found her. His mother, Lyra, crumpled beside the well, her silver hair matted with blood. A savage gash across her throat told the tale of her end. She clutched a broken staff, as if she had fought to her last breath. Eron fell to his knees, cradling her cold form. Tears blurred his vision, sobs racking his frail body. "Mother, why?" Flashes of memory, her gentle hands bandaging his scrapes, her stories by the fire, her unwavering faith in him. But Mira, where was Mira? He scoured the wreckage, overturning debris, his voice hoarse from shouting. Footprints led away. Heavy boots, mingled with smaller ones, dragged through the mud. Savages, the nomadic raiders from the northern wastes, whispered about in tales of horror. They struck without mercy, taking what they wanted, food, weapons, and captives. Eron's grief twisted into rage. His sister, kidnapped, alive perhaps, but in the clutches of monsters. The village destroyed, his world shattered in a single night, while he chased glory in the woods. As rain began to fall, mingling with his tears, Eron buried his mother in the soft earth behind their ruined hut. He salvaged what he could, a cloak, a dagger, the antlers now a bitter reminder. The hunt had proven him a man, but at what cost? Vengeance burned in his veins, a strength born not of muscle, but of unbreakable will. He would track the savages, rescue Mira, or die trying. The weak boy was gone. From the ashes rose a warrior. But the path ahead was fraught with peril. The northern wastes were a frozen hell of blizzards and beasts, guarded by tribes fiercer than any stag. Could Eron, still frail in body, summon the cunning to survive? Part 3. Curses of the Compass. The rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the earth into a quagmire of mud and despair. Eron trudged northward, his boots sinking into the sodden ground with each laborious step. The antlers from the stag, his hard-won trophy, were strapped to his back, their sharp points jabbing into his shoulders like accusatory fingers. He'd buried his mother in haste, whispering a final farewell as the storm clouds gathered. Now, with Mira's fate hanging like a noose around his neck, he pressed on into the unknown. The northern waste beckoned, a land of jagged mountains and frozen tundras where the savages roamed like wolves in the night. Eron's body, still frail despite the fire in his soul, protested every mile. His muscles ached from the hunt, and grief weighed heavier than any pack. He had scavenged what he could from the village ruins: a woolen cloak to ward off the chill, a water skin, a few strips of dried meat, and his father's dagger, its blade nicked but sharp. The footprints of the raiders had led him here, but the rain had long since erased them, leaving only intuition and desperation to guide him. As dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, Eron spotted a flicker of light through the trees. A campfire, perhaps. Hope and caution warred within him. Strangers in these woods could be allies or foes, but he needed information, shelter, anything to aid his quest. Creeping closer, he hid behind a cluster of ferns, peering at the scene. A lone traveler sat by the fire, cloaked in tattered robes that seemed woven from shadows themselves. The man's face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but his hands, gnarled and adorned with rings of bone and silver, poked at the flames with a stick. A mule grazed nearby, laden with bundles that clinked mysteriously. No weapons in sight, but something about the man set Eron's nerves on edge. "Who lurks in the dark?" the traveler called out suddenly, his voice a raspy whisper that carried like wind through leaves. Eron froze. "Come, boy, the night grows cold, and I have stew to share." Swallowing his fear, Eron stepped into the light. "I mean no harm," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm traveling north." The traveler lifted his head, revealing eyes like polished obsidian gleaming with an unnatural light. A scar twisted across his cheek, and his smile revealed teeth filed to points. "North, eh? A dangerous path for one so slight. Sit, share my fire. Name's Thorn, peddler of curiosities, seeker of the forgotten." Eron hesitated but complied, warming his hands by the flames. The stew bubbled in a pot, its aroma making his stomach growl. Thorn ladled some into a wooden bowl and passed it over. "Eat. You look like you've seen ghosts." As Eron ate, he studied Thorn. The man's bundles held oddities, vials of swirling liquids, carved talismans, a map etched on what looked like human skin. "What brings you to these woods?" Eron asked between bites. Thorn chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "The same as you, perhaps. Adventure, loss, revenge." His eyes flicked to the antlers on Eron's back. "Those are fine specimens, from the great wood stag, I wager. Rare, those. The antlers hold power, echoes of the wild spirit." Eron's hand instinctively went to his dagger. "They're mine. Proof of my hunt." "Ah, but proof to whom? A village in ashes? A sister stolen by barbarians?" Thorn's words struck like arrows. Eron's eyes widened. "How do you—" "I see much, boy. The winds whisper secrets. You're seeking the Iron Claws tribe, aren't you? Savages from the Frost Peaks. They raid for slaves, for sport. Your sister, Mira, was it? She's alive, but time is short." Eron leaped to his feet, dagger drawn. "Who are you? Speak plainly." Thorn raised his hands placatingly. "A traveler, as I said, but one with gifts. I can help you find her. In exchange, those antlers." Suspicion gnawed at Eron, but desperation won. "What would you give me?" From his bundle, Thorn produced a small, ornate compass. Its casing was brass, etched with runes that seemed to shift in the firelight. The needle, instead of pointing north, spun lazily, glowing faintly. "This, the compass of desires. It points not to directions, but to what you need most. But beware, needs and wants are tricky things. It may lead you to glory, or doom." Eron eyed it warily. "Cursed?" Thorn's smile widened. "All-powerful things are, in a way. But for your sister, is it not worth the risk?" After a long pause, Eron unstrapped the antlers and handed them over. Thorn's eyes gleamed as he tucked them away. In return, the compass felt warm in Eron's palm, almost alive. "Ask it what you need," Thorn advised, "and follow where it leads." As Eron pocketed it, Thorn stood abruptly. "Our paths diverge here. Remember, boy." The compass shows truth, but truth can kill. With that, he vanished into the shadows, mule and all, leaving Eron alone with the dying fire. That night, under a canopy of stars, Eron held the compass. "Show me the way to Mira," he whispered. The needle spun wildly, then settled on a direction, not north but northwest, toward a dense thicket he had avoided earlier. With a deep breath, he followed. The forest grew denser, trees twisting into grotesque shapes, their branches like clawing hands. The air thickened, carrying a metallic tang. Hours passed, and doubt crept in. Was this a trick? But the compass pulsed warmly, urging him on. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. Shadows detached from the underbrush. Beasts of nightmare, their forms amorphous, eyes glowing red like embers. Shadow beasts, the very creatures from village tales, guardians of the deep woods. They slithered forward, tendrils of darkness lashing out. Eron's heart hammered. He turned to flee, but more appeared, encircling him. Panic surged. He was no fighter. A tendril whipped out, grazing his arm, burning like acid. He cried out, stumbling back. Luck, or the compass's curse, intervened. As he fell, his hand struck something hard beneath the leaves, a skeletal arm, clad in faded leather. Frantically, he dug, uncovering a skeleton half buried in the earth. The bones were ancient, but the gear intact, a cloak of shimmering black fabric, boots soft as silk, gloves with embedded gems, and a mask carved like a raven's beak. A belt held daggers that hummed with energy. The shadow beasts closed in, their howls deafening. In desperation, Eron donned the gear. The cloak enveloped him like a second skin, the mask fitting perfectly over his face. Power surged through him. Strength not of muscle, but of shadow itself. His vision sharpened, seeing through the darkness as if it were day. The gloves tingled, and he felt an instinctive urge to blend, to vanish. As a beast lunged, Eron willed himself into the shadows. To his astonishment, his body dissolved into mist, slipping through the creature's grasp. He reformed behind it, daggers in hand. The blades sliced through the beast's form, drawing inky blood that evaporated into smoke. The fight was chaotic, a dance of luck and newfound ability. Eron dodged tendrils, his boots granting unnatural speed, leaping from tree to tree. The cloak absorbed blows, turning them to harmless whispers. One by one, the beasts fell, their essences absorbed into the gear, empowering it further. Panting, Eron stood amid the dissipating shadows. The skeleton, now bare, crumbled to dust, but a faint whisper echoed in his mind. "I was Kale, assassin of the lost kingdom of Valor. My gear is yours, heir of shadows." The abilities coursed through him, shadow-stepping, enhanced senses, the power to mimic the beast's darkness. No longer weak, Eron was transformed, a rogue born from death. With the compass pointing onward, he continued, the forest thinning into rolling hills. Days blurred into a montage of survival, hunting with shadow daggers, evading patrols, the compass leading him through perils. A ravine of thorns, a swamp of illusions, each nearly fatal, yet yielding hidden boons, herbs for healing, a hidden spring. Finally, he crested a hill overlooking a bustling town. Rivermore, a crossroads of traders and wanderers. Smoke rose from chimneys, voices carried on the wind. Here, he could find news of the Ironclaws, the barbarians who held Mira. Disguised in his new cloak, mask tucked away, Eron entered the gates. The streets teemed with life. Merchants hawking wares, blacksmiths hammering steel, children darting underfoot. He made for the tavern, the rusty anchor where tongues loosened with ale. Inside, the air was thick with pipe smoke and laughter. Eron slid onto a stool at the bar, ordering bread and water with his scant coins. "Heard any tales of the northern raiders?" he asked the barkeep, a burly man with a missing eye. The man grunted. "Ironclaws? Aye, they've been bold lately. Raided a village south of here 2 nights past. Took captives, women and children mostly. Heading back to their stronghold in the Frost Peaks, they say. Why, you looking to join 'em?" Eron's grip tightened on his mug. "Lost kin to them. Any word on where exactly?" A grizzled mercenary nearby overheard, leaning in. "Frost Peaks are vast, lad, but rumors speak of a pass guarded by wolves the size of horses. Their chieftain, Grimthar, collects slaves for the mines. If your sister's among 'em, pray she's strong." As night fell, Eron gathered more whispers, maps sketched on napkins, warnings of blizzards and betrayals. The compass spun, pointing deeper north, but now with his shadow abilities he felt ready. Yet, the curse lingered. The compass had led him to death's door twice already. What horrors awaited in the peaks? Part 4. Shadows of the Immortal. The chill of the northern winds bit into Eron's skin like the fangs of a predator, unrelenting and merciless. Rivermore had provided him with scraps of information, whispers from drunken tongues and shadowed corners, but it was the cursed compass that truly guided him now. Its needle, ever fickle, pointed steadfastly north, deeper into the frost peaks, where the Iron Claws barbarians made their lair. Eron had traded his last coins for supplies. A fur-lined cloak to combat the encroaching frost, a sturdy rope, and a pouch of salted provisions. His shadow gear hummed against his body, a constant reminder of the ancient assassin Kale's legacy. The abilities it granted, shadow stepping, enhanced agility, the power to blend into darkness, had turned his frail form into something more, a vessel for the night itself. As he left the town's flickering lanterns behind, the landscape transformed. Rolling hills gave way to craggy foothills, dusted with the first snows of winter. The air grew thinner, each breath a labored gasp. Eron's mind raced with thoughts of Mira, her emerald eyes, her innocent laughter. "Hold on, sister," he murmured to the wind. "I'm coming." Days blurred into a grueling march. The compass led him through narrow valleys where avalanches rumbled like distant thunder, and across frozen streams that cracked underfoot like brittle bones. He encountered wolves once, their eyes glowing in the twilight, but a mere whisper of shadow form scattered them, their howls fading into echoes. The curse of the compass revealed itself in subtle ways. It directed him to a berry bush laden with fruit, only for the berries to induce feverish dreams of his mother's death. It pointed to a cave for shelter, where echoes of ancient screams haunted his sleep. Yet each peril honed him, sharpening his resolve like a blade on whetstone. On the fifth day, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the snow, the compass veered sharply right. Eron paused, frowning at the device in his palm. North had been his path, straight as an arrow, but now it insisted on this deviation, toward a sheer mountain face that rose like a sentinel, its peaks lost in swirling mists. "Why here?" he whispered, but the needle remained firm, pulsing with that eerie warmth. He pushed forward, the snow crunching under his boots. The mountain loomed, surface a mosaic of jagged rock and ice, impenetrable. Eron scanned for a path, a trail, anything, but found only vertical cliffs that mocked his efforts. Gripping his rope, he attempted to climb. His gloved hand sought purchase on icy ledges, but his arms, still slender despite the shadow enhancements, trembled with strain. He ascended a mere 10 feet before a gust of wind dislodged him, sending him tumbling back into a snowdrift. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he rose, defiant. Again he tried, using shadow step to flicker upward in bursts, but the rock was unyielding, slick with frost. Exhaustion clawed at him. Doubt whispered that this was another of the compass's deadly tricks. As night fell, the moon emerged, a silver orb bathing the mountain in ethereal light. Eron sat against a boulder, staring at the compass. Its glass face caught the moonlight, and for a moment it shimmered, not with reflection, but with revelation. A faint glow outlined in a hairline crack in the mountain wall, invisible in daylight, a fissure no wider than a man's arm. It pulsed in sync with the compass, as if the device were speaking to the stone itself. Heart pounding, Eron approached. The crack was there, a sliver of darkness amid the rock. He pressed his hand against it. It felt unnaturally cold, vibrating with an otherworldly energy. Recalling his shadow abilities, he willed himself to transform. His body dissolved into swirling mist, tendrils of shadow that slipped through the crack like smoke through fingers. The passage was tight, even in this form. A tunnel meant not for flesh and bone, but for creatures of the void. Shadow beasts, he realized with a chill. This place was forged for them, a hidden vein in the mountain's heart, inaccessible to the living. Emerging on the other side, Eron reformed in a cavernous chamber, lit by faint phosphorescent veins in the walls. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of ancient dust and forgotten magic. Stalactites hung like fangs from the ceiling, and the floor was etched with runes that glowed faintly under his boots. In the center stood a pedestal, atop which perched a stone crow, its wings folded, eyes carved from obsidian that seemed to watch him. Clutched in its talons was a dagger, slender and nail-like, its blade shimmering with an iridescent sheen that defied the dim light. Curiosity and the compass's insistent pulse drew him closer. The needle pointed directly at the dagger, unmoving. Eron reached out, fingers wrapping around the hilt. He pulled, but it held fast, as if fused to the stone. He tugged harder, muscle straining, but it didn't budge. Frustration mounted. He tried prying with his own dagger, leveraging his weight, even striking the pedestal with a rock. Nothing. The compass remained fixed, its warmth a silent command. Try everything. Eron paused, breathing heavily. Everything, including his shadows. He transformed again, his form becoming ethereal. In this state, his misty hand passed through the crow's stone talons, grasping the dagger's essence rather than its physical form. With a gentle pull, it came free, solidifying in his grip as he returned to flesh. The chamber reacted instantly. Darkness poured in from the walls, not mere shadow but a living void that swallowed the phosphorescence. It coiled around him, whispering fears into his mind. Visions of Mira's screams, his mother's lifeless eyes, his own frailty exposed. Terror gripped him like never before, a primal dread that rooted him in place. His heart raced, sweat beaded on his brow despite the cold. Then, the stone crow stirred, cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, and it animated with a grinding screech, its obsidian eyes fixed on Eron. "What do you seek, mortal?" it croaked, voice echoing like wind through a tomb. "The nail of eclipse is not given lightly. What price will you pay?" Eron clutched the dagger, his voice steady despite the fear. "Power. Power to save my beloved sister from the barbarians who took her. I'll pay whatever it takes." The crow tilted its head as if amused. "Power, yes, but know this. It comes with chains unseen." Without warning, it lunged, its beak stabbing into Eron's chest, piercing his heart. Pain exploded, white-hot and all-consuming. He gasped, collapsing to his knees as darkness flooded his veins. The crow dissipated into wisps of shadow, merging with the void around him. Eron awoke hours later, or was it days? Sprawled on the cavern floor. The darkness had receded, the chamber empty save for the pedestal, now cracked and lifeless. The nail of eclipse was in his hand, warm to the touch. But something had changed within him. Power surged through his body, not just the assassin's shadows, but something deeper, ancient. He could feel it, the ability to command darkness itself, to summon tendrils of void, to heal wounds with night's embrace. He pushed forward, never knowing that the bird had been the immortal king of shadows, a being from the lost kingdom of Valor, sealed away eons ago. Now, its essence flowed in his blood, granting him dominion over the unseen. With renewed vigor, Eron exited the mountain through another hidden fissure, the compass spinning northward once more. The frost peaks awaited, their snow-capped summits piercing the sky like spears. He traveled swiftly now, shadow-stepping across chasms, evading blizzards that would have felled lesser men. The nail enhanced his gear. Daggers extended into shadowy whips. His cloak absorbed light entirely, rendering him invisible even in daylight. As he crested the final ridge, the barbarian stronghold came into view, or what remained of it. The Iron Claw's fortress, carved into a glacier's side, was a smoldering ruin. Towers lay toppled, walls breached by some unimaginable force. Bodies littered the ground, barbarian warriors frozen in death poses, their axes and furs scorched. Smoke still rose from the debris, mingling with the scent of blood and ash. Eron's heart sank. No, Mira. He descended cautiously, shadow form allowing him to slip past any lingering threats. The destruction was total, tents ripped asunder, forges overturned, slave pens shattered and empty. Who could have done this? The Iron Claws were feared raiders, their chieftain Grimthar, a legend of brutality. What force could overwhelm them so utterly? He searched the ruins, overturning rubble, calling Mira's name. Footprints, larger than human, clawed and deep, led away from the site. Scorch marks on the walls suggested fire. But not ordinary flames, they pulsed with residual energy, like echoes of magic. In the chieftain's hall, he found Grimthar's corpse, the massive barbarian impaled on his own throne, eyes wide in terror. Answers eluded him, but the compass pointed eastward, toward uncharted territories beyond the peaks. Where was Mira? Had she escaped in the chaos or been taken by these new invaders? Desperation fueled him. He needed allies, information. The power of the immortal king burned within, but it came with whispers, urges to embrace the darkness fully. As night fell, Eron camped in the ruins, the nail glowing faintly. Visions plagued his dreams, a hooded figure commanding flames of shadow, armies clashing in forgotten wars. The lost kingdom's secrets were unraveling, tying his fate to ancient prophecies. But for now, his quest was singular. Find Mira, uncover the destroyers, and wield his newfound power without losing himself to it. The trail led to a distant valley, where rumor spoke of a rival clan. The Flame Wraiths, masters of infernal magic. Could they be responsible? Eron set out at dawn, the weight of shadows on his shoulders. But deeper mysteries stirred. The compass's curse twisted paths, and the immortal king's power demanded a toll. Visions of corruption, a hunger for more. Would Eron succumb, or rise as a true guardian of the wild? Eron's journey eastward from the ruined stronghold was a descent into a world both familiar and alien. The frost peaks gave way to jagged canyons, where rivers of meltwater carved deep gorges into the earth. The air warmed slightly, but the landscape remained hostile. Thorny brambles choked the paths, and predatory birds circled overhead, their cries echoing like warnings. The nail of Eclipse, now sheathed at his belt, pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, a constant companion that both empowered and unnerved him. He traveled by night, when his shadows were strongest, slipping through the terrain like a ghost. During the day, he rested in hidden crevices, reflecting on the destruction he'd witnessed. The Iron Claws had been no saints. Their raids had terrorized villages like his own for generations. But their end was too swift, too absolute. The clawed footprints suggested beasts, yet the scorch marks hinted at sorcery. Eron's mind raced with possibilities. Rival tribes, ancient curses awakened, or perhaps mercenaries hired by vengeful survivors. On the second night, he encountered a survivor, a lone barbarian, wounded and delirious, huddled by a dying fire in a shallow cave. The man's arm was mangled, wrapped in blood-soaked rags, and his eyes darted wildly. Eron approached in shadow form, materializing silently before him. The barbarian startled, grabbing for a broken axe. "Demon, stay back!" "I'm no demon," Eron said calmly, his voice laced with the nail's echoing timbre. "What happened to the stronghold? Who attacked?" The man laughed bitterly, coughing blood. "Flame Wraiths. Cursed firebringers from the burning valleys. They came like a storm, flames that burned cold, beasts of ash and smoke. Grimthar fought, but their leader, a woman with eyes like embers. She shattered our walls with a word." Eron leaned closer. "Captives? A girl, 8 years old, with emerald eyes." The barbarian's gaze softened briefly. "The slaves. Some fled in the chaos. Others taken by the wraiths, for their rituals, they say. If your kin's among them, pray to the old gods." "Where do they lair?" "South of the valleys, in the obsidian spire. But you'll die trying, boy. Their magic devours shadows like yours." Eron pressed for more, but the man slumped, life fading. He buried him shallowly, marking the grave with a stone. The compass confirmed the direction. South now, veering from east. Another twist, another potential trap. As he pressed on, the terrain shifted to volcanic badlands. Ash fields stretched endlessly, dotted with geysers that spewed steam and sulfur. The nail's power grew here, feeding on the ambient darkness of the soot-choked skies. Eron tested its limits. He summoned tendrils of shadow to ensnare a rabbit for food, healed a gash from a falling rock with a mere thought. But with each use, whispers invaded his mind, urges to dominate, to consume. "You are king now," they said. "Take what is yours." He shook them off, focusing on Mira. Memory sustained him, her small hand in his during village festivals, her questions about the stars. "I'll find you," he vowed. In the heart of the Badlands, he stumbled upon a caravan. traders fleeing the region, their wagons laden with spices and silks. Eron revealed himself, bartering information for a meal. The leader, a weathered woman named Sira, eyed his gear suspiciously. "You carry the mark of Valor," she said, pointing to the raven mask tucked in his belt. "Lost Kingdom relics. Dangerous." Eron tensed. "You know of it?" "Aye, tales from my grandmother. Valor fell to its own shadows, kings who wielded darkness until it wielded them. The immortal king, sealed away, they say. If you've his power, boy, tread carefully." She shared maps of the burning valleys, warning of patrols and traps. In return, Eron aided them against bandits, his shadow whips dispatching the foes with ease. Gratitude earned him a companion, a young scout named Lear, orphaned like him, who insisted on joining. "I've no home left," Lear said, "and you fight like a legend." Together, they ventured deeper. Lear's knowledge of the land proved invaluable. Hidden oases, safe paths through lava flows. But tensions rose. Lear noticed Eron's growing pallor, the way his eyes sometimes gleamed with unnatural light. "That dagger, it's changing you," he warned. Eron dismissed it, but doubt lingered. The compass led them to a forgotten ruin, an outpost of Valor itself. Inside, murals depicted the immortal king's reign. Battles against light wielders, pacts with shadow beasts. One image showed the king as a crow, stabbing a warrior's heart, mirroring Eron's encounter. Revelation struck. He carried the king's essence. Power, yes, but a curse that could corrupt. They pressed on, evading flame-wraith scouts. Ethereal figures cloaked in flame, riding ashhounds. In a skirmish, Eron unleashed the nail's full might, summoning a vortex of darkness that extinguished their fires. Victory came, but at cost. Lear was wounded, and Eron's whispers grew louder. Finally, the obsidian spire loomed, a towering black monolith, wreathed in eternal smoke. Guards patrolled its base, but Eron's shadows allowed infiltration. Inside, halls echoed with chants. Slaves toiled in forges, crafting weapons of fire. He searched cells, heart racing. In the depths, he found her, Mira, chained in a ritual chamber, pale but alive. "Eron?" she whispered, eyes wide. Relief flooded him. But as he freed her, alarms blared. The flame-wraith leader, Mira, confronted them, a woman of flame and fury. "The Shadow Heir," she sneered. "We've been waiting." Battle ensued. Shadows versus flames, a clash of elements. Eron's power surged, the immortal king's might overwhelming her. But in victory he spared her, demanding answers. "Why destroy the Iron Claws? Why take my sister?" Mira laughed weakly. "Not us alone. A greater force stirs. The Lightbringers, ancient foes of Valor. They manipulated us, seeking to draw out the king's heir. Your power awakens old wars." Mira safe in his arms, Eron fled with Lear, the compass spinning wildly. The destruction was part of a larger scheme, his inheritance a key to chaos. Where to now? Answers lay in Valor's heart, but shadows hungered. Part 5. Embrace of Light and Shadow. The escape from the obsidian spire was a blur of fire and shadow, a chaotic symphony of clashing elements that echoed through the volcanic badlands. Eron clutched Mira tightly in his arms, her small frame limp and frail against his chest. She was alive, barely, her emerald eyes fluttering weakly as fever ravaged her body from the ordeals of captivity. Lear, the young scout who had become an unlikely ally, ran beside them, his face streaked with soot and blood from the skirmish with Mira and her flame wraiths. The air was thick with the acrid scent of sulfur and scorched earth, and behind them the spire's silhouette loomed like a vengeful giant, its smoke plumes clawing at the sky. "We can't stop," Eron gasped, his shadow-enhanced speed carrying them across jagged lava fields. The nail of Eclipse pulsed at his belt, feeding him surges of dark energy. But even the immortal king's power had limits. Mira's breaths came in shallow rasps. The barbarian's harsh treatment and the flame wraith's ritual preparations had left her emaciated and broken. She needs rest, healing, somewhere safe. Lear nodded, scanning the horizon. "There's a small village to the east, Whisperwind Hollow, hidden in the foothills, away from the main paths. Traders speak of it as a refuge for the weary. We can make it by dawn if we push." They pressed on through the night, evading patrols of ashhounds that howled in the distance. Eron's mind raced with fragments of the revelations from Mira. The Lightbringers, ancient foes of the lost kingdom of Valor, pulling strings from the shadows. They had orchestrated the Iron Claw's destruction to lure him out, sensing the awakening of the immortal king's essence within him. But such thoughts were luxuries he couldn't afford now. Mira's life hung by a thread. As the first rays of dawn pierced the gloom, Whisperwind Hollow came into view. A cluster of modest cottages nestled in a verdant valley, ringed by ancient willows that swayed like guardians. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, and the faint bleat of goats carried on the breeze. It seemed idyllic, a stark contrast to the hellish landscapes they'd fled. Villagers eyed the trio warily as they stumbled into the square, but compassion won over suspicion when they saw Mira's condition. An elderly woman emerged from a thatched hut at the village's edge, her back bent with age, her hair a cascade of white like fresh snow. She wore simple robes embroidered with faded symbols that Eron, in his exhaustion, dismissed as herbalist markings. "Poor child," she murmured, her voice a soothing croon. "Come, bring her inside. I am Alara, healer of these parts. I've herbs and salves that can mend what ails her." Grateful beyond words, Eron carried Mira into the hut, laying her on a pallet of soft furs. Lyr collapsed nearby, nursing his wounds, while Alara busied herself with potions and poultices. The air filled with the aroma of lavender and chamomile, calming Eron's frayed nerves. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to breathe. Days turned into a fragile routine. Mira recuperated slowly, her strength returning in fits and starts. Alara tended to her with unwavering care, feeding her broths laced with restorative herbs, and singing lullabies that seemed to weave peace into the very walls. Eron hunted in the nearby woods, his shadow abilities making short work of game, while Lyr scouted the perimeter, ensuring no pursuers followed. The village offered anonymity. Its inhabitants were reclusive folk, survivors of past raids who asked few questions. But beneath the serenity, cracks began to form. Eron noticed subtle oddities, Alara's eyes, sharp and knowing despite her age, lingering on the nail of Eclipse when he thought she wasn't looking. Lyr grew distant, his laughter fading, replaced by vacant stares into the fire. One night, as Mira slept fitfully, Eron confronted him. "What's eating at you, friend? You've been like a ghost these past days." Lyr shook his head, avoiding Eron's gaze. "Nothing, just dreams, strange ones, voices whispering." Eron dismissed it as fatigue, but unease gnawed at him. The compass, tucked away, spun erratically when near Alara's hut, as if sensing a hidden peril. Yet, with Mira improving, her cheeks gaining color, her voice returning in soft whispers, he pushed the doubts aside. It happened on a moonless night, when the village slumbered under a blanket of stars. Eron had stepped out to gather firewood, his senses heightened by the shadows. A faint cry pierced the silence, Mira's voice, laced with terror. He shadow-stepped back to the hut, materializing in the doorway to a scene of horror. Lyr stood over Mira's pallet, the nail of Eclipse in his hand, its blade gleaming wickedly. His eyes were glazed, unseeing as if puppeted by an invisible force. Mira cowered, her small hands raised in defense. "Lyr, no, please!" Time slowed. Eron lunged, tackling Lyr to the ground. The dagger clattered away as they grappled, Lyr's strength unnaturally amplified. "What are you doing?" Eron roared, pinning him. "It's me! Eron, snap out of it!" Lyr's face contorted in agony, a flicker of recognition breaking through. "Not my fault," he gasped, blood trickling from his lip where Eron's fist had struck. "She made me. The voices, the light." Before Eron could process the words, Lyr went limp, his eyes clearing in his final moments. A sob escaped him. "Forgive me." Then, stillness. Eron stared at his hands, stained with the blood of his ally, forced to kill to save his sister. Mira wept softly, clinging to him. At that time, Eron didn't understand. The brainwashing, the manipulation. Madness crept in, a roaring tide that drowned reason. Alara was gone, vanished into the night. Rage ignited within Eron, the immortal king's whispers amplifying it to an inferno. He fled after her, leaving Mira in the hut with hasty instructions to hide. The village stirred, but he was a shadow, slipping through the willows like wind. The chase led into the darkened woods, where Alara waited in a clearing, her frail guise shed. She stood tall now, robes glowing with ethereal light, her eyes blazing like suns. "Foolish heir of shadows," she sneered. "The Lightbringers have watched you. Your darkness threatens the balance. It must be purged." She was no simple healer. A Lightbringer in disguise, an agent of the ancient order that had toppled Valor. Magic flared, beams of radiant energy lanced toward him. Eron dodged, summoning tendrils of shadow to counter. The fight was brutal, the clearing erupting in clashes of light and dark. Trees splintered, the ground scorched. Eron's power surged, the nail guiding his strikes, but Alara's light burned through his defenses, searing his skin. In the midst of the chaos, unseen by Eron, a young magic knight named Thorn, unrelated to the traveler of old, but a coincidence that fate wove, approached the hut on a routine patrol from the distant capital. Drawn by the distant flashes of magic, he entered to find Mira alone, the structure beginning to ignite from stray sparks of the battle. Flames licked the thatch, spreading rapidly. Thorn, clad in gleaming armor etched with protective runes, scooped the girl into his arms. "Fear not, child. I'll get you to safety." With a spell of wind, he extinguished the initial blaze and spirited her away toward the capital of Eldoria, where healers and kings could protect her. Eron, locked in combat, knew nothing of this. Back in the clearing, Eron landed a fatal blow, his shadow whip coiling around Alara's throat. She gasped, light fading from her eyes. The war begins anew. You cannot escape the light. With her death, the madness fully took him, a whirlwind of grief, rage, and the immortal king's corrupting influence. He staggered back to the hut, only to find it reduced to ashes, embers glowing like accusing eyes. No sign of Mira, only charred remnants. Torn with grief, Eron fell to his knees, howling at the heavens. He thought her dead, consumed by the flames sparked from his own battle. "Mira, no, not you." Tears streamed down his face, mixing with ash. In that moment he swore an oath, his voice breaking yet resolute. "I will kill all the Lightbringers from the face of the earth, every last one, for what they've taken." The madness propelled him onward, blind and reckless. He fled deeper into the Badlands, the landscape a mirror of his shattered soul. Cliffs rose like jagged teeth, and in his delirium he tumbled into a ravine, rolling down steep slopes until he lay bruised and broken at the bottom. A river of lava flowed nearby, its molten glow casting hellish light on the rocks. Heat warped the air, but amid the desolation, a small entrance yawned in the cliff face, a cave, hidden and ancient. Crawling inside, Eron found respite from the blaze. The cavern was cool, unnaturally so, its walls adorned with intricate murals that stretched into the gloom. Faint luminescent fungi illuminated the scenes, depictions of light and dark coexisting in harmony, figures of radiant beings and shadowy entities dancing in unity, sharing power in a grand cycle. But half the mural was destroyed, crumbled away by time or force, leaving the story incomplete. He couldn't discern how it ended, the split of powers, the fall into enmity. It teased at forgotten lore, perhaps tied to Valor and the Lightbringers' ancient feud. In the chamber's heart lay a small coin of silver, rimmed with dark shadowy essence that swirled like living ink. It hummed with latent power, drawing him near. Desperate for strength to fuel his vengeance, Eron reached for it in shadow form. The coin rejected him violently. Light erupted, searing his ethereal essence, nearly unraveling him. Pain lanced through his core, forcing him back to flesh, gasping. Slumped against the wall, memories of Mira flooded him. Her laughter, her trust. Tears fell splashing onto the stone floor. "For what am I looking for power now?" he whispered, voice raw. "My sister is dead. What's left?" The coin responded. Light bloomed, filling the room with a gentle radiance that enveloped him like a blanket. It soothed his grief, drawing out the poison of madness, and with it stripped his powers. The shadows receded, the immortal king's whispers silenced. The coin adhered to his chest, just right of center, embedding painlessly into his skin. He felt equilibrium, light embracing shadow, halting the rampage within. Balance restored, but at a cost. His frailty returned, unshielded. For a month, Eron remained in the cave, sustained by trickling water and sparse fungi. He meditated on the murals, piecing together fragments of lore. The coin, he sensed, was an artifact of unity, a relic from before the schism. His body healed slowly, but his spirit mended, grief tempered into quiet resolve. When he emerged, the world felt changed. The lava had surged in his absence, destroying his gear. Cloak, boots, gloves melted to slag. Only the nail of Eclipse remained, unscathed, tucked safely away. With no destination, he wandered the wilds, aimless yet alive. Fate led him to a guild of mercenaries in a border town. The Iron Fangs, a ragtag band of warriors for hire. Drawn by the promise of purpose, he joined, his skills honed by past trials, earning him a place despite his slender frame. He fought in skirmishes, guarded caravans, filled the emptiness with camaraderie and coin, not knowing that the power inside him had not faded but grown stronger, sealed by the coin until his body could bear it. A new path unfolded, shadowed by secrets. Yet, whispers of Lightbringers reached even here, rumors of their resurgence. Plots in the capital where Mira, unknowingly to him, recovered under Thorn's protection. The balance teetered, awaiting ignition. Eron's first days with the Iron Fangs were a trial by fire, both literal and figurative. The Guildhall was a fortified tavern in the dusty town of Grimhold, where ale flowed like rivers and scars were badges of honor. Captain Thorn, a grizzled veteran with a prosthetic arm forged from enchanted steel, eyed Eron skeptically during his initiation. "You look like a stiff breeze could topple you, lad. What makes you think you can swing with us?" Eron met his gaze steadily, the coin's warmth a silent anchor. "I've faced worse than breezes. Give me a blade and I'll prove it." Prove it he did. In a sparring match against a burly recruit, Eron's agility, remnants of his shadow training, danced circles around brute force. He disarmed the man with precise strikes, earning nods of approval. The nail, hidden under his tunic, remained dormant, its power sealed but whispering potentials. Life in the guild filled the void. Missions varied, escorting merchants through bandit-infested passes, quelling beast uprisings in the fringes of the great woods, even delving into ruins for lost artifacts. Eron formed bonds with Silas, a jovial archer who shared tales of lost loves, with Kara, a fierce swordswoman who taught him advanced footwork. They laughed around campfires, shared spoils, mended wounds. For the first time since the village's fall, Eron felt a semblance of belonging. But grief lingered, a shadow the coin couldn't fully banish. Nights brought dreams of Mira, her voice calling from flames. He threw himself into danger, seeking oblivion in battle. One mission took them to the edges of the burning valleys, where echoes of the flame wraiths stirred old wounds. There, they clashed with remnants, ash cultists summoning fiery elementals. Eron's dagger flashed, its edge still keen, felling foes with ruthless efficiency. During a lull, Silas noticed the coin's faint glow through Eron's shirt. "What's that trinket, mate? Looks ancient." Eron touched it absently, a reminder of balance lost and found. Rumors filtered in, Lightbringers amassing in the capital, Eldoria's king allying with them against dark threats. Eron's oath simmered, but sealed power restrained his madness. He investigated discreetly, interrogating captured foes, piecing clues. Subplots wove through his days. A rival guild, the Silver Serpents, vied for contracts, leading to tense standoffs. Eron uncovered a traitor within the Fangs, exposing him in a dramatic confrontation. Romances flickered, Kara's lingering glances, but Eron held back, heart scarred. Months passed. His body toughened, frailty yielding to lean muscle. The seal weakened subtly, shadows stirring in dreams. Unbeknownst, Mira thrived in the capital, trained by Thorn as a budding mage, her memories of Eron fueling her search. A pivotal mission, raiding a Lightbringer outpost. Eron's restraint snapped. He unleashed hints of power, shadows flickering. Victory came, but questions arose. "What are you?" Kara asked. "The heir to whispers," he replied, eyes distant. Part 6. Light's Messiah and Shadow's Fury. In the heart of Eldoria's capital, Aurelia, where spires of crystalline marble pierced the clouds and banners of golden light fluttered in perpetual breeze, Mira awoke to a world reborn. The young magic knight Thorn had carried her from the burning hut in Whisperwind Hollow, his armored form a beacon amid the flames. She remembered little of that night, the chaos of Lyr's betrayal, Eron's desperate departure, the elderly woman's sinister glow. Fever had claimed her then, blurring memories into fragments of smoke and shadow. But as Thorn's horse thundered toward the capital, Mira's small hands clutched his cloak, whispering prayers to unseen spirits. Aurelia was a marvel, a city of light forged from the ashes of ancient wars. Its streets bustled with scholars in flowing robes, merchants hawking enchanted wares, and guards clad in armor that shimmered like captured stars. The palace loomed at its center, a bastion of white stone adorned with murals depicting the triumph of light over darkness, the fall of Aelor, the banishment of the immortal king. Thorn, a knight of the royal order, delivered Mira to the healer's ward, where potions and incantations mended her frail body. Days turned to weeks in the sunlit halls. Mira, once a village sprite with emerald eyes and wild curls, found solace in the Lightbringer's teachings. The Order, ancient guardians against Shadow's creep, had infiltrated the kingdom's core, their priests whispering prophecies in the king's ear. Thorn introduced her to them, sensing a latent spark in her, an affinity for magic born from trauma. "The light chose you, child," he said, his voice firm yet kind. "It saved you for a purpose." Under the tutelage of High Priestess Leora, a woman with eyes like polished sapphires and a voice that commanded storms, Mira delved into the arcane. She learned to channel light through her palms, weaving spells that banished illusions and healed wounds. Her power grew swiftly, unnaturally so, as if the flames of her ordeal had forged her anew. The Lightbringer saw it as a sign, a messiah risen from obscurity, a vessel to counter the resurgent shadows. One fateful evening, in the grand cathedral of Aurelia, Mira stood before the assembled faithful. The air hummed with incense and chants, golden orbs floating like fireflies. High Priest Valthor, a towering figure with a beard, like flowing silver and robes embroidered with radiant runes, ascended the pulpit. His voice boomed, echoing off vaulted ceilings. "Hearken, brethren, the shadows stir once more. Their king awakened in mortal guise. He who wields the nail of eclipse, heir to Valor's curse, marches toward our light. Prophecies foretell destruction, the world cloaked in eternal night. Cities crumbling under tendrils of void, souls devoured by the immortal's hunger. But fear not, the light provides. Behold, our Messiah, Mira of the Flames, chosen to pierce the dark." The crowd erupted in awe as Mira stepped forward, her form transformed. Her hair, once dark and tangled, now flowed in waves of white gold, kissed by light's essence. A mask of enchanted silver covered the left half of her face, etched with protective wards that concealed scars from the fire. In her hands, she bore the Lance of Dawn, a massive weapon, its shaft forged from star-fallen metal, its tip glowing with heavenly magic, capable of rending the skies. She raised it, and a beam of pure light shot upward, illuminating the cathedral like a second sun. "I am the light's blade," Mira declared, her voice amplified by inner power. "I will stand against the shadows, for the world and all who dwell in it." The Lightbringers hailed her as their messiah, a symbol of hope. Whispers spread through Aurelia, the girl from the wilds, saved by divine intervention, destined to avert apocalypse. Mira embraced it, her memories of Eron and the village fading into a hazy past, reshaped by teachings that painted shadows as ultimate evil. She trained relentlessly, mastering spells that could shatter darkness, her lance becoming an extension of her will. Yet, in quiet moments, a flicker of doubt, a brother's face, lost in smoke, haunted her dreams. Word of shadow incursions reached the Order. Outposts in the outer territories, besieged by beasts of void, harbingers of the king's return. Valthor summoned Mira. "Go, Messiah, aid our brethren in the fringes, prove the light's dominion." With a contingent of knights, including Thorn, Mira set forth, her golden hair streaming like a banner. The journey took them through verdant plains and misty forests, toward the shadowed borders where light and dark clashed eternally. Meanwhile, in the dusty halls of the Iron Fangs Guild, Eron's life had settled into a rhythm of steel and survival. The coin embedded in his chest maintained balance, sealing the rampant shadows while granting subtle enhancements, heightened senses, resilience beyond his frail frame. He had become a valued mercenary, his dagger strikes precise, his strategies cunning. Bonds with Silas and Kara deepened, evenings around campfires wove tales of glory and loss. But fate, ever cruel, intervened during a routine raid on a bandit stronghold in the Badlands. The mission was straightforward: infiltrate, seize treasures, retreat. Eron led the vanguard, his nail humming faintly. Yet betrayal lurked. A mole within the guild alerted the bandits. Ambush struck, arrows rained, swords clashed in chaos. Silas fell first, an axe cleaving his chest. Kara fought valiantly, but numbers overwhelmed. Eron unleashed restrained shadows, tendrils lashing foes, but the seal held firm, limiting his might. The raid failed spectacularly. Eron escaped barely, dragging Kara's wounded form to safety, but Silas and others perished. In the aftermath, as he tended her by a flickering fire, grief reignited, the same hollow ache from Mira's presumed death. The coin pulsed, but the seal cracked under emotional strain. Shadows stirred, the immortal king's whispers returning. Embrace us. Avenge. Kara, bandaged and pale, gripped his hand. It wasn't your fault, Eron. We all knew the risks. But the loss fueled him. That night, rumors reached their camp via a wandering trader. A small girl saved from a burning hut in Whisperwind Hollow, matching Mira's description. Emerald eyes, spirited laugh. She had been taken to Eldoria's capital, thriving under royal protection. Eron's world tilted. Mira, alive? Hope warred with madness, the seal fracturing further. He left the mercenaries abruptly, bidding Kara a hasty farewell. I must know if it's true. Forgive me. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Find your peace, friend, but come back. He ran, a lone figure against the horizon, madness returning in waves. Shadows beasts, drawn by his turmoil, ambushed him in the wilds, amorphous horrors with glowing eyes. He slew them mercilessly, the nail extending into whips of void. Lightbringers patrolling the borders fell next, their radiant spells no match for his resurgent fury. Bodies littered his path, a trail of darkness cutting toward Eldoria. Days blurred into a relentless pursuit. He traversed mountains and rivers, the coin's light struggling to contain the shadows. Visions plagued him, Mira's face, the burning hut, the immortal king's crow form laughing. She lives, he muttered, driving onward. Finally, the imposing kingdom of Eldoria rose before him. Aurelia's walls gleaming under the sun, a fortress of light. Guards at the gates eyed him warily, but his shadowed cloak concealed his intent. He infiltrated under cover of dusk, whispers guiding him toward the cathedral where rumors placed the miracle child. Unbeknownst to him, Mira's path converged. Sent to the outer outposts, she arrived at a besieged fort near the borders, where shadow incursions intensified. The immortal king, Eron, in his maddened state, raided nearby, seeking clues. Their encounter was inevitable. In the misty dawn, amid crumbling ruins, Mira's contingent clashed with a figure of pure shadow. He emerged from the fog, nail in hand, tendrils coiling. Lightbringers, he snarled, not recognizing the masked warrior before him. Mira, her white gold hair flowing, mask hiding her features, raised her lance of dawn. Shadow King, your reign ends here. Magic surged, the lance pierced the heavens, summoning bolts of light. Eron dodged, shadows countering. The battle raged, lance clashing against dagger, light versus dark. He fought fiercely, the failure's loss reigniting his full power, saving him from fatal strikes. Yet a familiarity nagged, her eyes piercing through the mask. She pressed, unaware the foe was her brother, transformed by grief and power. The clash echoed, drawing reinforcements. Eron retreated, wounded but alive, the rumors of Mira fueling his resolve to breach Aurelia. Inside the city, he sought answers, the madness a double-edged blade. The capital's underbelly was a labyrinth of alleys and hidden taverns, where secrets traded like currency. Eron melted into the crowds, his cloak drawn tight. Beggars whispered of the Messiah, a girl with golden hair, wielder of light, preaching salvation from shadows. His heart raced. Descriptions matched Mira, but twisted into divinity. He infiltrated a Lightbringer enclave, shadows silencing guards. Scrolls revealed prophecies, the Shadow King's return, a Messiah to oppose him. Doubt crept. Could Mira be their tool? Meanwhile, Mira returned from the outpost, her encounter with the king etched in memory. He was strong, she confided to Thorn, but the light will prevail. Volthor praised her. You faced the Harbinger. The end draws near. Part 7. Shadows of Revelation. The imposing spires of Aurelia's grand cathedral pierced the night sky like spears of forged light, casting long, ethereal glows over the cobblestone streets below. Eron moved through the shadows of the capital like a wraith, his cloak blending seamlessly with the darkness that clung to the alleyways. The city was alive even at this late hour. Guards patrolling with lanterns that hummed with magical wards, merchants closing their stalls with weary sighs, and distant chants from lesser chapels echoing like whispers of devotion. But Eron's focus was singular: the cathedral, the heart of the Lightbringer's power, where secrets were buried deeper than any grave. Rumors from the underbelly had led him here, whispers of hidden archives, forbidden knowledge that could unravel the Order's facade and awaken Mira from her indoctrinated slumber. His body ached from the journey, the coin embedded in his chest pulsing faintly, a reminder of the fragile balance he maintained. The nail of Eclipse, sheathed at his belt, thrummed with anticipation, its dark essence eager for release. Eron had infiltrated Aurelia days ago, slipping past the outer walls under cover of a storm that masked his shadow form. Now, as the moon hung low, he approached the cathedral's side entrance, a servant's door guarded by two acolytes whose eyes scanned the night with bored vigilance. He dissolved into mist, slipping through the keyhole like smoke, reforming in the cool, incense-laden corridor beyond. The interior was a marvel of opulent deception. Vaulted ceilings painted with murals of radiant heroes vanquishing shadowy horrors, golden altars adorned with crystals that captured and amplified light. But Eron saw through the veneer. These were symbols of control, not salvation. He moved silently, avoiding the main halls where late-night prayers were held, descending instead toward the undercroft. Stone steps spiraled downward, the air growing cooler and heavier with the scent of earth and aged paper. Torches flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows that he merged with effortlessly. The undercroft was a maze of storage rooms and forgotten relics, but Eron's instincts, honed by the immortal king's legacy, guided him deeper. He had overheard a disgruntled priest in a tavern earlier, complaining of the forbidden depths where only the high initiates dared venture. Pushing aside a heavy tapestry depicting the fall of Valor, he revealed a concealed door, its frame etched with runes that glowed faintly. The wards were designed to repel shadows, but Eron's power, tempered by the coin's light, allowed him to phase through, the magic tingling against his skin like 1,000 needles. Beyond lay the catacombs, a sprawling network of tunnels that twisted like veins through the earth. The walls were lined with niches holding ancient bones, the remains of past Lightbringers enshrined as martyrs. Dust motes floated in the dim light of sporadic luminescent fungi, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant drip of water. Eron navigated with care, his shadow tendrils probing ahead for traps. He encountered one early, a pressure plate that, when triggered accidentally by a probing shadow, unleashed a burst of radiant energy that scorched the air. He learned quickly, disarming others with precise strikes from the nail. Hours passed in the labyrinthine depths, Eron's determination unwavering. He searched alcoves and hidden compartments, rifling through dusty scrolls that spoke of minor heresies and forgotten rituals. But he sought more, the core truths that could shatter Mira's faith. Finally, in a chamber sealed by a door of enchanted crystal, he found it. The door's surface was inscribed with warnings. Knowledge herein is for the pure of light. The shadowed shall be consumed. Eron phased through in shadow form, the words protesting with a hum that vibrated his essence. But he emerged intact in a secret chamber that pulsed with forbidden energy. The room was a treasure trove of deception, illuminated by a single eternal flame that burned without fuel in the center. Shelves lined the walls, groaning under the weight of ancient tomes bound in leather that seemed to breathe. Scrolls sealed with wax imprinted with the Lightbringer's sigil, and artifacts encased in glass, crystals infused with captured shadows, vials of swirling essences labeled as void samples. Eron's heart raced as he began to uncover the truths. He started with a massive ledger titled The Annals of Equilibrium, its pages filled with meticulous script that detailed the ancient past. As he read, the history unfolded like a nightmare. Millennia ago, light and shadow were not enemies but partners in creation's grand design. The power of creation, a primordial force that birthed worlds, sustained life, and wove the threads of reality, was born from their union. The kingdom of Valor, realm of shadows, and the empires of Luminar, bastions of light, coexisted in harmony. Kings and queens from both sides met in sacred councils, sharing wisdom to maintain balance. Illustrations in the tome showed shadowy figures and radiant beings collaborating, forging mountains from void, igniting stars with light, nurturing life in perfect equilibrium. But greed corrupted the light's guardians. The high priests of Luminar, driven by a desire for eternal dominion, began to view shadows as chaotic, unpredictable, a flaw in their vision of ordered perfection. They conducted secret experiments, siphoning creation's power toward light alone, suppressing shadows to hoard its might. Dissent brewed in Valor, warnings ignored. The war that followed was cataclysmic. Radiant armies scorched shadowlands. Void storms swallowed light citadels. Battles raged across realms, the fabric of reality fraying. The turning point came with the immortal king's stand. As Valor's sovereign, he wielded shadows like extensions of his will, his crow form darkening skies in defense. But betrayal from within, shadow lords, tempted by light's promises, allowed the priests to enact a sealing ritual. The king was bound into a stone crow, his essence containing the unstable power of creation to prevent universal unraveling. Valor crumbled, its remnants becoming the haunted wilds where shadow beasts now roamed. The light triumphed, but the imbalance birthed endless strife, shadows manifesting as monsters eternally seeking restoration. Eron's hands trembled as he delved into more recent volumes. These revealed the Lightbringer's ongoing atrocities. In hidden laboratories beneath cathedrals like this one, high priests engineered the shadow beasts. Captured essences from the wilds were infused with corrupted light in alchemical vats, twisting them into horrors unleashed on villages. Diagrams showed the process in gruesome detail. Screaming voids shaped into snarling forms, released to terrorize and drive survivors into the Order's embrace. Fear cultivates faith. One entry noted, "The beasts are our shepherds, herding the flock to salvation's gates." His village's destruction fit the pattern, a staged raid to harvest disciples. Mira's rescue was no miracle. It was exploitation, molding her trauma into a messiah figure to rally the masses. The high priest planned to unseal fragments of creation's power, using Mira as a vessel to wield it for total control. The cathedral's bells had just tolled midnight when Eron became nothing. He let the shadows swallow him whole, flesh dissolving into black mist that poured through the iron grate of a drainage gutter behind the cathedral kitchens. The two guards stationed at the side door never saw the darkness coil around their ankles like living smoke. One moment they were yawning, the next, shadow tendrils snapped up their throats, slammed their skulls together with a wet crack, and dragged the bodies into the gutter filth before a single drop of blood could hit the flagstones. Eron reformed behind them, boots silent on stone, heart hammering with cold purpose. Inside, the cathedral's nave glowed like a furnace of false dawn. 1,000 candles and floating orbs of white fire turned the air itself into molten gold. Eron clung to the vaulted ceiling, a living silhouette crawling upside down across frescoes of triumphant angels, the nail of Eclipse clenched between his teeth. Below, the congregation sang in perfect brainwashed harmony, while High Priest Valthor prepared to anoint Mira with the stolen fragment of creation's power. Eron dropped. He fell 30 feet in utter silence, cloak snapping once like a raven's wing, and landed in a crouch directly behind Valthor. The high priest was mid-prayer, arms raised, chalice glowing with liquid starlight. Eron's shadow hand shot out, fingers lengthening into black claws that punched through ceremonial robes and breastplate alike. The nail followed a heartbeat later, sliding between ribs with a sound like tearing silk. Valthor's eyes bulged. A strangled gasp escaped as the poison blade drank the light from his veins. The chalice tipped, spilling liquid sunlight that hissed and steamed across marble, eating stone like acid. Pandemonium detonated. Screams ricocheted off the vaulted ceiling. Nobles trampled one another toward the exits. Knights in mirrored armor drew swords that screamed with white fire. Eron ripped the nail free in a spray of arterial crimson, spun and flung 3 shadow needles thin as spider silk, sharp as regret, into the nearest guards. The needles punched through visors and throats, dropping the men before their swords cleared scabbards. Mira was already moving. She vaulted the altar rail in a blaze of white gold hair, the lance of dawn igniting with a sound like 1,000 bells shattering at once. The weapon's blade became a miniature sun, trailing molten light as she thrust. Eron barely parried. The impact hurled him backward through a marble column. Stone exploded into dust and razor shards. He rolled with it, shoulder slamming the ground, and came up inside a coil of his own shadow that lashed out like a living whip. The whip wrapped Mira's ankle and yanked. She flipped mid-air, turned the fall into a spinning slash that carved a 10-foot gouge in the floor, molten marble splashing like lava. Eron shadow-stepped behind her, nails screaming for her throat. She sensed him, spun, and their weapons met in a cataclysmic ring of light and void. Sparks of pure white and absolute black detonated outward, hurling pews into splinters and blasting stained glass saints into glittering shrapnel. They fought like twin storms. Mira's lance became a comet, each thrust leaving trails of burning scripture in the air. Eron countered with liquid shadow, tendrils erupting from his back like wings of night, parrying, coiling, striking. One tendril slipped past her guard and punched into her shoulder plate. The armor cracked, light bleeding out like golden blood. She answered with a downward stab that split the marble between Eron's feet and sent a shockwave that shattered every candle in the hall. The fight spilled through the side doors into the moon-drenched cloister garden. Rain hammered down in silver sheets, turning the ground to mirror-black mud. Lightning forked overhead, illuminating them for frozen in a tableau of war. Mira, hair plastered to her face, mask cracked, eyes blazing with tears and fury. Eron, cloak in tatters, blood running from a dozen searing cuts where light had kissed flesh. "Brother, why?" she screamed over the storm. "Because they lied to you," he roared back, voice raw. "I'm taking you home." He lunged. She parried and riposted with impossible speed. The lance's tip carved a burning arc across his chest, parting skin and muscle in a hiss of cauterized meat. Eron hissed, but used the momentum to spin inside her guard, shadow arm lengthening into a blade that stabbed for her heart. Mira twisted at the last instant. The shadow blade scraped across her ribs, drawing a line of black fire that made her stagger. That was when Thorn arrived. The Knight Captain burst through the cloister arch in a blaze of white runes, great sword screaming with holy light. He swung in a horizontal arc meant to take Eron's head. Eron dropped flat. The blade passed overhead and sheared through 3 stone pillars instead, toppling them like felled trees. Before Eron could rise, Thorn's boot slammed into his ribs, lifting him off the ground and hurling him 10 yards into a rosebed of thorns that drank his blood greedily. Eron spat blood and laughed, low and broken. "Come on then, dog of light." Thorn charged. Mira hesitated only a heartbeat, then followed. The 3 met in the center of the garden, like colliding gods. Thorn's sword became a white-hot guillotine. Eron parried with a shield of writhing shadow, but the holy edge carved through, taking his left arm at the shoulder in a single, perfect stroke. The severed limb hit the mud with a wet thud, fingers still twitching. Agony exploded white-hot behind Eron's eyes. He screamed, shadow essence erupting from the stump in a violent geyser of black fire that forced both Mira and Thorn back. He used the moment. Shadow exploded outward in a sphere of absolute night, swallowing moonlight, swallowing rain, swallowing sound. When it collapsed an instant later, Eron was gone, only a spiral of black mist racing across the rooftops, trailing blood that steamed in the rain. Mira dropped to her knees in the mud, lance clattering beside her, staring at the severed arm as though it belonged to a stranger. Thorn tried to pull her up, but she shoved him away, tears cutting channels through the mud on her face. Hours later, soaked and shaking, Mira returned to her chambers in the palace wing. On her pillow lay a single sheet of parchment sealed with a drop of familiar blood. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. The letter was written in Eron's handwriting, stained with ash and blood. It told her everything: the catacombs, the engineered monsters, the greed that shattered Valor, the sealing of the king, the false miracles built on graves. The final lines were carved deep, as if the quill had tried to cut the paper itself. I lost an arm tonight so you could keep your soul. Come home, Mira. Come back to the place where Mother rests. I will wait among the ruins until the moon dies or you arrive. Choose truth, little sister. I still believe in you. Eron. She clutched the letter to her chest, rain and tears mingling, while outside the storm raged on. Far beyond the city walls, Eron staggered through wilderness, cradling the cauterized stump that already writhed with new shadow flesh. Pain was a distant drumbeat beneath the single burning thought. Home, Mother's grave, the ruins. There it ends. Part 8, Final Chapter, Mother's Grave. The journey home took 23 nights. Eron did not walk so much as crawl, stagger, and kill his way across the wilds. Every shadow beast that lunged from the dark became fuel. He met the first pack 3 leagues outside Aurelia. 6 hulking amalgamations of void-black muscle, ember eyes, claws dripping tar. They smelled the blood from his missing arm and came howling. Eron met them with nothing but the nail and pure animal hatred. The fight was not elegant. He let the first beast rip into his side, teeth punching through ribs, just so he could drive the nail up under its jaw and into its brain. Black blood gushed over him like hot oil. When the second and third leapt together, he dissolved into mist, reformed behind them, and slammed both shadow arms, one newly grown, still raw and smoking through their spines. Their dying shrieks fed him. He tore the darkness from their corpses in writhing ribbons and dragged it into the stump of his shoulder. Bone cracked, sinew reknit, fingers erupted from the wound like black roots seeking moonlight. By the time the last beast fell, his left arm had regrown, longer, clawed, veined with pulsing void. He did not stop again. Every night he found more. Wolves of living smoke, serpents with human faces, things that had once been men before the Lightbringers twisted them. He killed them all, drank them all, grew stronger, darker, colder. The coin in his chest cracked, light shadow, flickering like a dying star. Each absorption pushed him further from the boy who once feared lifting a bow and closer to something ancient waking up behind his eyes. On the 20th night, he reached the ruins of his village. The ashes had long since blown away. Weeds and silverthorn had claimed the burned beams. The only thing untouched was the small mound behind their old hut. Mother's grave, marked by a simple river stone Eron had carved himself the day they buried her. Moonlight bathed it in cold mercy. He knelt. The shadow arm flexed, claws digging furrows in the earth. "I'm home, Mother," he whispered, voice cracked and hollow. "I brought her killer with me, and I'm going to fix it." He waited. On the 23rd night, the horizon lit up. A column of pure white fire marched across the valley. 200 Lightbringer knights in mirrored plate, banners snapping with holy sigils, war priests riding white destriers that breathed light instead of mist. At their head rode Mira. She had come alone at first. Thorn had tried to stop her, but she had taken the Lance of Dawn and 50 of the elite Dawnblades and ridden through the night. Her hair was still white gold, but the mask was gone. Her face was pale, beautiful, terrible. The girl he remembered was buried beneath armor of faith and grief. She stopped 10 paces from the grave. "Eron," she called, voice carrying like a temple bell. "Surrender, come with me. The High Conclave has fallen apart without Valthor. We can rebuild everything, together. Please, brother, put down the darkness." Eron rose slowly. Moonlight carved him in silver and black. His cloak was shredded ribbons. His left arm was now a thing of living night, claws long as daggers. The nail hung at his side, dripping slow tears of void. His eyes were no longer human, twin furnaces of violet-black fire. "They stole you from me," he said. "Every word a blade. They burned our mother. They twisted the world until monsters wore holy robes. There is no together while even one of them breathes." Mira's knuckles whitened on the lance. "Then I will stop you myself." She raised the weapon. The sky split. The final battle began with a sound like the world inhaling. Mira struck first. The Lance of Dawn became a comet of white hot, fast enough to leave after images seared on the retina. Eron did not dodge. He stepped into it. The spear punched clean through his chest, erupted out his back in a fountain of black fire. For one heartbeat, the battlefield froze. Then he smiled. Shadow exploded from the wound, wrapping the lance shaft, crawling up Mira's arms like hungry ivy. She screamed and ripped the lance free, but the darkness clung, burning cold. Eron's claws raked the air. 5 crescent voids tore across the valley, carving trenches 20 feet deep and bisecting the front rank of knights. Men and horses became red mist and screaming light. The Dawnblades charged. Steel met shadow in a storm of ruin. Spears of pure radiance stabbed down like falling stars. Eron shattered them with fists of night, each impact birthing shockwaves that hurled bodies into the sky. A war priest summoned a dome of holy fire. Eron walked through it untouched, grabbed the man by the face, and crushed his skull, drinking the light straight from the corpse until the priest's armor ran like molten gold. Another knight swung a 2-handed sword wreathed in scripture. Eron caught the blade between 2 shadow claws, snapped it, and drove the broken halves through the man's shoulders, pinning him to the earth like a butterfly. Mira fought at the center of it all. She danced through the carnage, lance spinning, carving arcs of dawn that severed shadow limbs as fast as Eron regrew them. Every clash of their weapons birthed thunder. Every wound she dealt closed in writhing darkness. Every wound he dealt bled molten light that hissed against his skin. They were mirror images of destruction, light and shadow devouring each other. The valley became a graveyard. Bodies piled in heaps. The earth cracked and bled. The moon itself seemed to dim under the sheer weight of power, unleashed power. And still Eron advanced. His madness crested like a black tide. The immortal king's voice was no longer a whisper. It was his own thoughts now, ancient, vast, merciless. End her. End them all. Let none who stole our sister live. He became the storm. Shadow erupted from him in a pillar that blotted out the stars, coalescing into a titanic silhouette, wings of night unfurling, crown of void fire burning above a face that was still Eron's but no longer human. The remaining knights broke and fled. Mira stood alone before the grave, lance shaking in her grip, tears cutting silver tracks down her cheeks. Eron, please. The immortal king raised a clawed hand the size of a house. Darkness condensed into a single spear of absolute night aimed at her heart. Time slowed. In the silence between one heartbeat and the next, something small and impossibly bright flickered inside the storm. A memory. Mira, age 5, tugging his sleeve in the herb garden. Tell me the story again, Eron. The one where the weak boy saves the princess. His own voice, small and trembling. He doesn't need to be strong. He just needs to love her more than he's afraid. The spear wavered. Eron's true eyes opened inside the Titan's face, violet fire dimming to human green. He looked down at his sister, saw the terror, the love, the grief, and for the first time since the night the village burned, he was afraid again. With the last fragment of himself that still belonged to the boy who once carried his little sister on his shoulders, Eron reached out, not with claws, but with his remaining human hand, and closed it around the blazing shaft of the Lance of Dawn. Mira's eyes widened. Eron. He pulled. The lance slid free of her grip and into his chest with his own strength, driving until the radiant tip erupted between his shoulder blades in a flare of white fire. Light and shadow met at his heart in a single, impossible instant. The explosion was silent. A perfect sphere of intertwined black and white erupted from his body, expanding until it swallowed the valley, the ruins, the grave, the sky itself. Every shadow beast in the world felt it and unraveled into harmless mist. Every spell of light ever cast flickered and died like candles in wind. Knights dropped their weapons as holy runes went dark. Mira's hair bled from white gold back to its original chestnut brown in the space of a heartbeat. When the light faded, Eron knelt in the crater that had once been their village, the lance buried to the hilt in his chest, shadow and radiance pouring from the wound in equal measure, annihilating each other in silent, beautiful destruction. Mira ran to him, fell to her knees, caught him as he toppled sideways. His remaining hand, human again, cupped her cheek. "I'm sorry," he rasped, blood black and gold bubbling at his lips. "All I ever wanted was to protect you." Tears fell from her eyes onto his face, hissing into steam where light and shadow still warred. "You did," she whispered. "You brought me home." Eron smiled, small, tired, finally at peace. "Tell Mother. The weak boy saved the princess after all." His hand slipped from her cheek. The nail of Eclipse clattered to the earth and crumbled into ash. The coin in his chest cracked down the middle, light and shadow pouring out together until nothing remained but a faint, warm glow that drifted upward like fireflies and vanished into the dawn. Mira sat alone among the ruins, cradling her brother's body until sunrise painted the sky the soft pink of a world reborn. The shadow beasts were gone. Light magic had vanished from every corner of the realm. People woke to a quieter, grayer, but truer world, one where neither force held dominion over the other. At the foot of Mother's grave, 2 saplings grew overnight, one of pale silver bark, one of deep ebony, their branches intertwining above the stone that now bore 2 names, Lyra and her son, Eron, who gave everything so the world could simply be. Mira stayed until the trees were tall enough to shade the stone. Then she laid the broken halves of the Lance of Dawn across the grave, turned her back on Aurelia, on titles, on prophecy, and walked into the ordinary dawn. She never used magic again. Some say, on certain quiet nights, when the moon is new and the wind moves gently through those twin trees, you can still hear a frail boy's voice telling his little sister a story about a weak hero who saved the princess. And this time, the story has a happy ending. The end.